I still remember exactly where I was standing when my entire world collapsed around me. I was in the bathroom at Sophie's 30th birthday party, the one I had spent 3 months planning down to the smallest detail. The fairy lights, the custom cake shaped like a camera because photography was her passion, the guest list I had personally curated to make sure everyone she loved was there. I was washing my hands, feeling proud of myself for pulling off the perfect surprise, when my phone buzzed in my clutch sitting on the counter. It was a text from Sophie's sister, Megan. We weren't particularly close, but we were friendly enough that I didn't think twice about opening it. The message was brief, just 3 words. "I'm so sorry." Attached was a screenshot. A forwarded text that would reveal 8 years of friendship had been nothing but an elaborate performance. The screenshot showed a conversation between Sophie and someone named Jess, a name I didn't recognize. Sophie had written, "Rachel's throwing me this massive party, and honestly, it's hilarious. She still has no idea I can't stand her. 8 years of pretending to be her best friend, and she's too pathetic to see through it. But hey, free party, free gifts, free emotional labor whenever I need it. She's basically my unpaid therapist and personal assistant wrapped into one sad little package." The response from Jess read, "You're terrible, LOL, but also she sounds kind of stupid." And Sophie had replied, "Oh, she definitely is, but useful, always has been." My hands were shaking so badly that I dropped my phone into the sink. The screen cracked against the porcelain, a spiderweb of fractures spreading across her cruel words. I picked it up, read it again, hoping maybe I had misunderstood. But the words were clear. There was no misinterpretation possible. My best friend, the woman I had loved like a sister, the person I had trusted with my deepest secrets and my most vulnerable moments, had been pretending the entire time. I want to tell you that I confronted her immediately, that I marched out of that bathroom, grabbed the microphone from the DJ I had hired, and exposed her in front of all those guests. But that's not what happened. Instead, I put my phone away, fixed my makeup in the mirror, and walked back out to that party with a smile on my face. I watched Sophie unwrap the expensive camera lens I had saved for months to buy her. I watched her hug me and call me her best friend. I watched her give a speech about how much our friendship meant to her while knowing every single word was a lie. And I started planning. To understand what came next, you need to understand how Sophie and I became friends in the first place. We met during our first year at university in Manchester. I was a scholarship student from a working-class family in Birmingham. My dad worked in a factory, my mom was a teaching assistant, and every pound I had came from years of part-time jobs and careful saving. Sophie was different. Her family had money, the kind of generational wealth that meant she never had to worry about anything. She had a car on campus while I took buses. She went home for weekends to a house with a pool while I stayed in my cramped dorm room studying. But despite all of that, she chose me. At least, that's what I thought at the time. She sat next to me in our psychology lecture, complimented my notes, and invited me to coffee. Within weeks, we were inseparable. She made me feel special, chosen, like I had somehow earned the attention of someone so glamorous and confident. Looking back now, I realized she was studying me, learning my weaknesses, figuring out exactly how to use me. Over the years, Sophie became the person I called when anything happened, good or bad. When I got my first real job after graduation at a marketing firm in London, she was the first person I told. When my father had his heart attack 3 years ago, she was the one who held me while I cried. Or at least, she went through the motions of holding me. I know now she was probably checking her phone over my shoulder the whole time. In return, I gave her everything. When she needed a co-signer for her first flat because her credit was bad, I signed without hesitation. When she was going through her breakups, and there were many, I was there at 3 a.m. with wine and tissues. When she wanted to start her photography business but couldn't afford the equipment, I lent her £4,000 that she never paid back. I didn't mind at the time. I thought that's what best friends did. The night after her birthday party, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed replaying every moment of our friendship, looking for signs I had missed. And once I started looking, I found them everywhere. The way she would subtly put me down in front of other people and then claim she was joking. The way she always seemed to date men I had expressed interest in first. The way she would cancel plans with me whenever something better came along, but expected me to drop everything when she needed me. The way she borrowed money constantly, but always had funds for designer bags and expensive dinners. The next morning, I called Sophie's sister Megan. She answered on the first ring, and I could hear the nervousness in her voice. Before I could even ask, she started explaining. She told me she had found Sophie's phone unlocked at the party and had been looking for a photo Sophie had promised to send her. Instead, she stumbled across the messages with Jess. She said she read through months of their conversations, and what she found was even worse than what she had sent me. Megan told me that Sophie and Jess had been friends since boarding school. They had kept in touch all these years, and Sophie used their chat as a sort of diary where she vented about everyone in her life, including me. Megan said the things Sophie wrote about me were disgusting. She mocked my appearance, my clothes, my family. She called me her charity case. She bragged about manipulating me into doing things for her. She even laughed about how I had cried at my father's hospital bed while she was secretly texting Jess about how boring it was. But the worst part, the part that still makes my chest tight when I think about it, was what Megan told me about my ex-boyfriend, Daniel. Daniel and I had been together for 2 years before we broke up suddenly, right before my 27th birthday. He had ended things out of nowhere, claiming he didn't see a future with me. I was devastated. Sophie had been there through all of it, comforting me, telling me I deserved better, helping me pick up the pieces. According to the messages Megan found, Sophie had slept with Daniel behind my back for months before the breakup. When he started feeling guilty and wanted to come clean, Sophie convinced him to end things with me instead. She told him I was emotionally unstable and that telling me the truth would destroy me. She positioned herself as my protector when she was the one holding the knife the entire time. The breakup I had mourned for over a year, the relationship I had blamed myself for ruining, had been sabotaged by the woman I trusted most in the world. Megan sent me screenshots of everything, hundreds of messages spanning years, evidence of every lie, every manipulation, every cruel joke made at my expense. As I scrolled through them, something inside me shifted. The grief and shock transformed into something colder, something patient, something that wanted justice. I didn't confront Sophie. Not yet. Instead, I started watching. I paid attention to her in ways I never had before, and I started to notice patterns. She was meticulous about her public image. Her Instagram showed a perfect life filled with successful photo shoots, glamorous events, and enviable friendships. But I knew now that most of it was fabricated or exaggerated. She borrowed clothes for photos and returned them. She crashed events she wasn't invited to. She edited her pictures so heavily they barely looked like her. More importantly, I discovered her photography business was not what she claimed it was. She had told everyone, including potential clients, that she was a fully qualified professional with a studio and a team. In reality, she worked alone out of her flat, had no formal training, and had been scamming clients for years. She would take deposits for weddings and events, deliver subpar work, and then ghost people who complained. She had burned through so many clients in London that she was constantly seeking new ones who hadn't heard the whispers yet. I also learned something else through my quiet investigation. Sophie owed money to a lot of people, not just me. She had a pattern of borrowing from friends and never paying them back. She was behind on her rent. She had credit card debt she was barely managing. Her entire glamorous lifestyle was built on borrowed money and borrowed time. The image she projected was a house of cards waiting to collapse. For the next 2 months, I played my role perfectly. I was still Rachel, loyal best friend, always available, always supportive. But now I was watching, gathering, planning. Every time Sophie lied to me, I made a mental note. Every time she borrowed money or asked for a favor, I documented it. Every time she talked about her business or her clients, I paid attention. Meanwhile, I started reconnecting with people from our shared social circle who had quietly drifted away over the years. It turned out many of them had similar stories. Sophie had borrowed money from them too. She had talked about them behind their backs. She had caused drama, and then painted herself as the victim. One former friend named Lily told me that Sophie had once spread a rumor that Lily had cheated on her fiancé, nearly destroying her relationship. Another named Tom revealed that Sophie had taken credit for a business idea he had shared with her in confidence. The more I learned, the clearer the picture became. Sophie wasn't just a bad friend to me. She was a serial manipulator who had left a trail of damaged relationships and empty wallets everywhere she went. She was a predator who targeted people she saw as useful and discarded them when they no longer served her purpose. I had just been lucky enough to remain useful for 8 years. It was around this time that Marcus came into my life more prominently. He was a colleague at my marketing firm, someone I had been friendly with but never particularly close to. He noticed something was different about me, the distracted looks, the way I tensed whenever my phone buzzed. One evening after a late meeting, he asked if I was okay, and something about his genuine concern broke through my defenses. I told him everything. Marcus listened without judgment. When I finished, he said something that has stayed with me ever since. He said, "The best revenge isn't loud. It's watching someone's own lies catch up to them while you're standing safely out of the blast radius." That became my approach. I wasn't going to destroy Sophie. I was going to step aside and let her destroy herself. I would just make sure the truth was ready and waiting when she did. The first step was the money. Sophie owed me £4,000, but she always had an excuse for why she couldn't pay. I decided to formalize it. I sent her a polite message asking when she might be able to start paying me back. She responded with her usual deflections, claiming business was slow and she was struggling. I suggested we put together a written repayment plan to make it easier for both of us. She reluctantly agreed. What she didn't know was that I was consulting with a solicitor. By getting her agreement in writing, I was creating a documented trail of her debt. More importantly, by asking detailed questions about her finances, I was learning exactly how precarious her situation was. She admitted in texts that she owed money to several people. She complained about clients who were demanding refunds. She mentioned that her landlord was threatening eviction. I stored all of it. The second step involved her business. Through my research, I had found multiple complaints about Sophie's photography services on various review sites and forums. Brides with ruined wedding photos, corporate clients with unusable headshots, people who had paid deposits and received nothing. Most of them had been too embarrassed or intimidated to take action. Sophie had a way of making people feel like they were the problem. I reached out to some of these former clients anonymously at first, then more openly as they began to trust me. I wasn't organizing them or telling them what to do. I simply connected them with each other and shared what I knew. They started comparing notes. They realized they weren't alone, and one by one, they began leaving honest reviews on every platform where Sophie advertised her services. Within weeks, her online reputation was in freefall. Her carefully curated image was crumbling under the weight of real testimonials from real people she had wronged. She complained about it to me, of course, not knowing I had anything to do with it. She called them jealous haters and trolls. She said it was a coordinated attack. I nodded sympathetically and suggested she hire a reputation management firm, knowing full well she couldn't afford one. The third step was the hardest. It involved Daniel, my ex-boyfriend. After learning the truth about Sophie's role in our breakup, I had struggled with whether to contact him. Part of me still felt hurt and betrayed by him, but I also knew he had been manipulated, just like me. So I reached out. Daniel and I met for coffee at a quiet cafe far from anywhere Sophie might see us. He looked nervous when I sat down, and I realized he probably expected me to be angry. Instead, I told him I knew everything. I showed him the screenshots, and I watched his face crumble as he realized how thoroughly Sophie had played both of us. Daniel confirmed everything Megan had told me, and then some. Sophie had pursued him aggressively when she knew he was with me. She had convinced him that our relationship was already failing, that I had confided in her about wanting to leave him. She had made him believe that being with her was somehow protecting me from a messy breakup. By the time he realized the truth, it was over, and Sophie had made him promise to keep quiet by threatening to tell me lies about him. He had been living with guilt for 2 years. I could see it had been eating at him. I didn't forgive him that day, but I told him I understood, and I asked him if he would be willing to tell the truth if it ever became necessary. He said yes. The final step required patience. I had to wait for Sophie to create her own downfall. Fortunately, I didn't have to wait long. Sophie had been planning her biggest photography event yet, a gallery exhibition showcasing her work meant to establish her as a serious artist rather than just an event photographer. She had been promoting it for months, calling in favors, borrowing money for the venue deposit, promising everyone it would be her breakthrough moment. She asked me to help organize it, of course, and I agreed enthusiastically. What Sophie didn't know was that I had discovered her gallery show had a very serious problem. Several of the photographs she planned to exhibit were not her work. She had taken them from lesser-known photographers online, edited them slightly, and planned to present them as her own. It was blatant copyright infringement, and it was about to happen in front of her entire social network and several local journalists she had invited for coverage. I reached out to the original photographers. I explained the situation and shared the promotional materials Sophie had created featuring their stolen work. They were furious. One of them was a fairly well-known artist in the photography community who had a significant following. They coordinated their response carefully, waiting for the exhibition itself to make their move. The night of the gallery show arrived. Sophie was radiant, dressed in designer clothes she had probably borrowed, greeting guests like she was already famous. I stood in the back, watching her work the room. She gave a speech about her artistic journey, about finding her voice through photography, about the authenticity of her vision. The irony was almost too much to bear. 20 minutes into the event, the original photographers made their presence known. They walked in together, approached Sophie in front of the gathered crowd, and calmly accused her of stealing their work. They had printed evidence showing the original images and dates of their creation. They had screenshots of Sophie's promotional materials. They had everything they needed to prove she was a fraud. The room went silent. Sophie stammered denials at first, then tried to claim it was a misunderstanding. But the evidence was overwhelming. One of the photographers had already posted the comparison images online, tagging Sophie's business accounts. Within the hour, it was spreading through the photography community like wildfire. The journalists Sophie had invited for positive coverage got a very different story than she had planned. A story about an aspiring photographer caught red-handed stealing other artists' work and attempting to profit from it. A story that would be picked up by several online publications in the following days, cementing her humiliation in searchable, permanent terms. But I wasn't done yet. With Sophie's reputation in freefall, the people she had wronged over the years began coming forward publicly. Former clients shared their stories of refunds never received and weddings poorly documented. Former friends talked about money borrowed and never returned. The mountain of evidence became impossible to ignore. Then Daniel posted his own statement. He didn't mention me by name, respecting my privacy, but he wrote honestly about how Sophie had manipulated him into a relationship by lying about his then-girlfriend. He talked about the guilt he had carried and his relief at finally being able to tell the truth. His post was shared widely, adding another layer to the growing picture of who Sophie really was. Megan, Sophie's own sister, publicly distanced herself from her. She posted a brief statement saying she had discovered troubling information about her sister's treatment of friends and colleagues and that she could no longer remain silent. Family members began quietly unfollowing Sophie online. The cracks in her carefully constructed world became chasms. The financial consequences were swift and merciless. Sophie's landlord, emboldened by her public disgrace, finally followed through on eviction proceedings. Her remaining clients demanded refunds she couldn't provide. The people she owed money to, myself included, began taking formal action now that her image of success had been stripped away, and her debts could no longer be hidden behind designer clothes and glamorous parties. I eventually received my £4,000, plus interest, through a court judgment that Sophie was ordered to pay. It took time, but it came. More importantly, I got something money could never buy. I got the truth, publicly acknowledged and undeniable. Sophie tried to contact me several times during her collapse, first with anger, accusing me of orchestrating everything, then with pleading, claiming we were best friends and begging me to help her like I always had. Finally with threats, saying she would expose secrets I had told her in confidence. I didn't respond to any of it, but I did keep her messages, documenting her unraveling, her descent from confident manipulator to desperate victim. Her threats never materialized because she had no leverage left. Everything she knew about me was the truth, and I had nothing to be ashamed of. The last time I saw Sophie was 6 months later, almost by accident. I was having dinner with Marcus, who had become something more than a colleague by then, at a restaurant we both loved. Sophie walked in alone, looking thinner and older than I remembered. Our eyes met across the room. She looked like she wanted to approach, then thought better of it. She turned and left without ordering. I felt a lot of things in that moment. Satisfaction, certainly. Some residual grief for the friendship I thought I had. But mostly, I felt free. Free from the constant drain of a relationship that had only ever taken from me. Free from the nagging feeling that something was wrong, but never being able to identify it. Free from wondering why I never felt good enough, even around the person who was supposed to love me most. I've spent a lot of time since then thinking about what makes someone like Sophie. I don't think she was born cruel. I think somewhere along the way, she learned that people were tools to be used rather than connections to be cherished. Maybe it was growing up wealthy and never having to develop genuine empathy. Maybe it was insecurity so deep that the only way she could feel valuable was by diminishing others. Maybe she was simply broken in ways I'll never understand. I don't feel sorry for her. I can't. Not after everything she did to me and to so many others. But I hope, for her own sake, that losing everything taught her something. I hope that somewhere in the wreckage of her life, she found the motivation to become a different person. I doubt it. People like Sophie rarely change, but I can hope. What I know for certain is that the experience changed me. I'm more careful now about who I let close. Not paranoid, just aware. I pay attention to patterns, to how people treat others when they think no one important is watching. I trust my instincts when something feels off, instead of dismissing my doubts to preserve a relationship that isn't worth preserving. Marcus and I are together now, building something real and honest. We don't play games with each other. We don't keep score. We're just two people who found each other at the right time and decided to be truthful about who we are and what we want. It's simple in a way that my friendship with Sophie never was, and I finally understand why. Real relationships shouldn't require constant performance. They shouldn't leave you feeling drained and uncertain. They should make you feel seen and valued, not like a useful appliance that can be discarded when a newer model comes along. If you're listening to this and something resonates, if you have someone in your life who makes you feel small while claiming to love you, please trust that feeling. Don't spend 8 years like I did, pouring yourself into a void that will never fill. You deserve people who celebrate you genuinely, who show up when it matters, who treat your heart like the precious thing it is. And if you've been betrayed the way I was, know that the truth has a way of coming out. Not always quickly, not always easily, but lies are heavy, and the people who tell them eventually grow tired of carrying them. Sometimes all you have to do is step back and let gravity do its work. The forwarded text that revealed everything was sent by accident, a moment of carelessness from someone who thought her secrets were safe. But nothing stays hidden forever. The truth is patient, and karma, when it finally arrives, doesn't need your help to be thorough. Sophie's downfall wasn't really my doing. It was hers. Years of lies and manipulation created a foundation of sand, and when the tide came in, everything she built washed away. I just made sure I was standing on solid ground when it happened. That's my story. Not a story of revenge exactly. More a story of revelation. Of finally seeing clearly after years of blindness. Of learning that the people who hurt us most are often the ones we trusted most. And that surviving their betrayal is not just possible, but the first step toward a better life. I don't think about Sophie much anymore. She's become a lesson rather than a wound. A reminder to value myself enough to demand honesty from the people in my life. A cautionary tale I carry with me, but no longer let define me. And on my best days, when I'm with Marcus, or my real friends, or my family, I feel something I never felt with Sophie, no matter how many years we spent together. I feel genuinely, completely, unapologetically happy. That's the best revenge of all.